we're going to move ahead. I want to move to the picture from Google Earth. It's an aerial view of the New Horizons spill site right there on the Mobile shelf. And let's go to the clicks because it will show the spill site and Lake Pontchartrain. Very, very important in the ecosystem down there, is it not?
Yeah, Lake Pontchartrain, first of all, Lake Pontchartrain is not actually a lake. Lake Pontchartrain is actually a bay with a very, very narrow neck.
Oh, okay.
It's a brackish water environment, not a freshwater environment. And so they do a lot of crabbing in Lake Pontchartrain. They do shrimp fishing in Lake Pontchartrain. So it's more ocean than it is lake.
But oil has reached there.
Now in there. And
in fact, let's go to this next picture. This is a Coast Guard picture just from a few days ago. I was amazed when I saw this picture. They're cleaning grass with mops. I mean, that's an impossible job.
I don't know how effective that will be. I mean,
that's a real nice way to put it.
But you have to understand how important that is. It's that the oil will kill that grass. And if that grass dies, what happens is that environment washes away because the grass roots are holding it there. And when they get the storm tides and storm surges that they get this time of year, without the grasses, they just end up with less marshland. In other words, big chunks of Louisiana go somewhere else.
So New Orleans is looking at it, getting it again, just in a different way than they got it with Katrina a few years ago.
That marshland is the incubator for most of the life in the Gulf of Mexico. That estuarian environment is where all of the eggs and breeding and all of that sort of stuff happens for populations of all sorts of organisms that end up living in the Gulf of Mexico.
So to accurately, I mean, can you accurately assess the damage from the spill at this point?
They won't know for decades.
So to put, so the $20 billion fund from BP.
The $20 billion fund is comparatively a drop in the bucket. I mean, when you start talking about, there are very big differences between the Gulf of Mexico and the Exxon Valdez. One of them is size. Now they figured it out that the spill, and that's something every oil spill is always underestimated, grossly underestimated. But the size of the spill is very, very much larger than the Exxon Valdez. You're talking about, you know, at best you have an Exxon Valdez every 10 days, and it's been 90 days.
Wow, and it's still
going. And so you have a huge change in that respect. You have proportionately a lot more impacted area. Prince William Sound makes up less than 10% of Alaska's coastline. And the fisheries and stuff that were infected, you know, I mean, it was actually, the total catch from Alaska in '89 was not impacted significantly by what was not caught in Prince William Sound, okay? Whereas along the Gulf of Mexico, you've affected the whole thing. Additionally, Prince William Sound, there was no tourist industry. There was no other industry that was impacted other than commercial fishing. And so here I would venture to guess between Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama, the tourist industry there, I would venture to guess that this year's losses in the tourism business will be over $100 billion.
How can they recover from that? I mean, that whole area was impacted by Katrina, certainly Mississippi and Louisiana much more than Florida. But how can they recover from that?
That's a very good question. I mean, and it's one that certainly the residents down there are having to come to grips with, and it's a very scary circumstance.
We only have a minute and a half left. As a salvage and recovery expert, someone involved with oil spills in the past, you know, you've been down there and looked at it. What can we do to make this better?
There are some things that I would ask you to continue to eat seafood from the Gulf of Mexico. That's vital to keeping that economy alive. There's a very rigorous testing system in place that will keep that safe. The amount of energy and effort that's going in to ensure that consumers continue to get safe seafood from there is just awesome.
Because most of the seafood in the United States seems to come from there.
It either comes from there or Alaska, but yeah. So eat Gulf oysters, eat Gulf shrimp. You know, I mean, do that, because the seafood processors down there, for instance, are by and large little mom and pop operations. And if you talk about, you close down if you're doing the closure of the offshore drilling, along with closure of the seafood processing place in the little bayou towns like Golden Meadow and that sort of thing, that town doesn't live. It dies. It dries up and blows away. And, you know, that's not New Orleans. That's Cajun country.
Yeah, and we're going to let that be the last word. Ladies and gentlemen, it's huge what's happening down there. There is a chance at recovery, but the recovery is mostly going to be fueled by us. So if you have questions, go to those two websites, the bp.com/Gulf of Mexico response or nrdc.org. You're going to learn an awful lot more. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on Public Exposure next week. Take care.